What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful day today. Slight breeze, warm, although you can feel that fall is in the air. Has that feeling of fall. Happens to be my favorite time of the year. Although here in Southern California, the seasons are very similar. Slight variations in temperature. Winter's a little bit on the cooler side, but not cold, no snow. Springtime is kind of like fall, and I don't know, you can't really describe it, but there's a feeling in the air, that coziness that fall time brings, and I enjoy it. I enjoy fall. I hear a helicopter coming. They found me. So anyway, the other day, a couple of days ago, I get home, turn on the computer screen, and it pops up Charlie Kirk shot. And I read it a couple of times because, I don't know, it was almost like I was reading something from the past. I go, this is recent. And then I thought it's probably, I don't know, something superficial. Maybe it grazed him, maybe it got him on the shoulder. About 5 minutes go by and I see another headline pop up and it says Charlie Kirk has died. And it was, very, very surreal at that moment. I don't know him that well. It's only been recently that I've heard about him. And the only reason that is because I'm a big radio guy. I enjoy listening to everything on the radio, AM, FM, different channels, different style of music. I listen to everything. Talk, I love talk. And I flip through, I listen to the news, I listen to people analyzing it. I have my own opinion. There's a guy, his name was Dennis Prager, still around, but he got injured last year. He fell down, I don't know, he injured his back, but very, very serious injury. So he's been out since almost a year now, had issues with breathing and very, very hard time. So anyway, he's no longer on the air, and as I'm flipping through, I hear a new voice, and they found a guy that I thought was some new guy. I thought it was like a local guy from a local town. They said, hey, can you fill in for Dennis until he recovers, because he's still in bed. So I flip on, and it says Charlie Kirk. I go, is that like related to Captain Kirk? But anyway, so I thought he was brand new. I had never heard of him before. I didn't know who he was, not even by face. It's not like I knew the face. I just didn't know his point of view on politics. And, I listened to him a few times, and then I kind of get the gist of what he was about. And then on the internet, I would see him once in a while. He would do these Q&A segments at universities, colleges, where he would allow students, teachers to come up to the microphone and ask him a question, and then he would respond, and in hopes that he would convince them that his opinion was the correct opinion or the better opinion. And then you see that somebody for whatever reason was angered, and they got a rifle and they took him out, which I'm trying to imagine the kids and all of this. That's the sad part. You got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Now the 1-year-old initially will notice the father is no longer around, the 3-year-old as well, obviously the 3-year-old. But I think the 1-year-old over time is not going to remember much of what happened or any of it. The 3-year-old though I have memories from those years when I was 2-3 years old. I can recall instances. So this is a very, very, very dramatic event, and you tend to remember the dramatic stuff in your life. So that's the sad part. The kid's gonna grow up without a father. Father was murdered, and very difficult. But we live in a world where every single day when I get up, every single day I'm like, what's going to happen today? what's going to happen today? Well, is there going to be another situation where there's like planes crashing into buildings? Is there going to be somewhere in the world a nuclear bomb goes off on some area where there's a conflict? We're going to have an earthquake. Are there going to be floods happening somewhere? You know, is a hurricane forming somewhere and it's going to devastate, you know, a bunch of states? People are going to be without a home. Every day there's something, every day. And you get up in the morning, you think, okay, it's not going to happen to me. And then it's your turn. Something happened. Something happened. But, you know, I don't know. I mean, he has his opinion. You have your opinion. Sometimes you agree with him. Sometimes you don't agree with him. But, you know, take him out with a bullet. Well, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. And eventually, you know, you look at it like I'm talking about the shooter now that they, you know, I hear they caught a guy, they caught someone turned in by his father. I guess his father's a sheriff, deputy sheriff, and turned him in, did the right thing. But, you know, one day this individual, I guess he's in his 20s, a young guy, he's going to say, why did I do that? You know, and I don't know, maybe he's not going to say that. He's going to say, you know, I'm 100%, you know, 100% comfortable with what I did. But I don't think so. You know, sometimes you don't know the reasons why. I mean, we caught him alive. A lot of times they end up killing themselves. You don't ever hear the story. They do the investigation, and at the end of the investigation, they say we don't know why he did it. Like the guy in Vegas a few years back at the I know the building. Anyway, yeah, that guy, he knocks out a window, pulls out his weapon, starts shooting down below. There was a concert, and kills a lot of people. To this day, even though there's been an investigation, no one knows the motive. No one knows. Some people are just, you know, they see the world in a way that they can't explain, and then it just frustrates them, and then they do something crazy like that. Unfortunate, but it's the world. It's you know, we live in a place, a lot of moving parts, and occasionally those moving parts collide. So yeah, it's tragedy after tragedy. Like I said, I get up in the morning and I think, what's going to happen today? What, you know, violent thing is going to happen today? It could be a bus full of children, drives off the cliff, driver was drunk, plane crashing. Every day there's something somewhere in the world. And sometimes it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. You don't know where it's going to get you from. You know, you're here, you're talking, get hit by a meteor. Yeah, it's like I said, I think about the kids more than anything. The wife, obviously, you know, brand new wife with him, brand new marriage, 4 years. That's not that old. I mean, it doesn't, I think it disqualifies you from being on the Newlywed Game. I think that was 24 months and under, but still, 4 years is not that long. And you know, you're kind of adjusting. You have your children now. You're thinking about the future, growing old together. And then a bullet comes around and takes you out and destroys all those plans. So, yeah. Best thing, you disagree with someone, you know, just say that that's your opinion. This is my opinion. That's it. You know, I'm not going to change your mind. You're not changing my mind, and let's just move on. I'm of the mind that as long as you're not hurting someone else, you should be able to do it. You know, as long as you're not interfering with someone else, you know, hurting them in some way, physically or emotionally, then you should be able to do what you want to do. You should be able to say what you want to say. You know, as long as you're not lying about someone, you're not maligning them. I'm not for that. No, you malign someone, you should pay a price for that. But, you know, if you have an opinion, you want to state it, you shouldn't be afraid to state it. And if somebody disagrees with you or you disagree with them, that's life. That's life. There are people that you vote for, and you'll say, well, I agree on 70% of what they say, but the 30% I don't agree. Well, if the 30% is something that you can live with, then you vote for them. If not, you don't vote for them. You move on to someone else. But you never have anyone that you agree with 100% of the time. Even your best friend, somebody you grew up with, you're going to have something you disagree on. Something. So, like I said, we live in a world where there's a lot of moving parts, and occasionally those parts collide. You know, I don't mind disagreement, but to solve it with a bullet, no. I don't get mad if somebody disagrees with me, and I don't get mad if I don't agree with them. I say that's the way you see the world. You grew up in a different environment. You had different experiences that formed your opinion. Some of them are, some opinions are genetic. Your genes kind of determine the way you look at the world, and you have to take that into account. People are born a certain way. That's the way it is. No need to get upset with them. So that's it. Now I turn on the radio and it's Charlie Kirk wall to wall. That's all you hear. I don't, and before that I hardly knew him. I only knew him on, a few times I heard him on the radio because he was filling in for Dennis Prager. That's it. But I miss old time radio. I'm gonna say this right now, that in the old days you didn't have syndication. There were a couple of big shots that had it. I think Wolfman Jack was across the nation. The Grease Man was across the nation. Casey Kasem, Rick Dees. But for the most part, every city had its own, people on the radio. I would listen to certain people on the radio in my town, and then I'd go to another town, and it would be a whole new set of people. It wasn't always the same person that was on like 400 channels throughout the country, and you could flip, oh, here he is, I listened to him back home. Different talent in every town, and I liked it better that way. Diversity of ideas is something that I am 100% for. I want to go listen to this person's point of view, listen to this person's point of view, and then make up my own mind. For me, what do I think? And just because I think it doesn't make it right either. I'm not beyond that to think that I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I could have an opinion on something and say after a while, I was wrong on that. I was wrong, and I got more information, and now I see it differently, and now I'm, I think this way. I think differently. You can't go through your entire life and never change an opinion on anything, so, but yeah, I liked it better in the old days. You would have talk shows, and they would, pretty much do a 100-mile area there, and then you'd leave that zone and go somewhere else and be a whole different group of people at night doing talk show during the day. I remember doing a cross-country trip when I was a lot younger, in my prime, and every few hundred miles there'd be new people on the radio I would listen to. I got into the South, and I was listening to a lot of like religious shows were down there. A lot of people were talking about that kind of stuff there. Then you go a little further over, it was a different style. I've said this before, I used to enjoy at nighttime, because I guess the signal bounces off is the stratosphere, ionosphere. It goes way up and then comes down, so you have a bigger area that the signal covers. And I used to listen to Norm Nathan. One night I was in South Carolina, North. They're still fighting. I was in North Carolina, and I was in a parking lot, and there was a photo mat there. I was listening to the radio, and I was like, and I caught Norm Nathan. And I said, I enjoy Norm Nathan. Norm Nathan kept it light, no real serious topics. It was kind of like, yeah, what'd you do today? I was at work today, and I ate roast beef sandwich. It was that kind of stuff. a little bit heavier, but in that, style, that genre. And there's not many people like that anymore. If you get a chance, find Norm Nathan, maybe on YouTube or something, and listen to him. I used to enjoy listening to that show. But yeah, and of course, I love the countdowns, American Top 40 with Casey Kasem. Loved 4 hours of nice music until you got to the number one hit of America, and then you'd hear it. And then I discovered that Billboard magazine is sold in stores, so I'd cheat. I'd go and I'd look at it and buy it, and then I'd see what the number one was, and I'd say, okay, I don't have to listen to the 4. I would still listen, but not to the entire 4 hours. I would listen to maybe a couple hours. Anyway, that's the way the cookie crumbles, and that's life. That's life, unfortunately, when it comes to these tragedies. That's it.